thanks again for the nice presentations. Let's open the floor for discussion. Who dares to start with the very first question?
There we are. We have one, and there is a microphone that is coming around. Juliette, should we sit down or we stay here? I don't know.
I would like to walk.
Walk? Okay. Does anybody else know? Okay. I'll sit down. I mean, for people who know me, they know that I'm pretty mobile, so sorry about that. It's comfortable.
Thanks. My name is Thomas. Really a question for Darron. You said at one point...
Microphone?
You said at one point client took a risk in net to gross ratio, and then you said something about sacrificing floor area for daylight. Joe said we can have green buildings at no extra cost, and that is a line you hear over and over again from architects. I'd like to know, what you really think about the cost in speculative buildings, particularly, of trying to accommodate more daylight and more ventilation. Does it come at the expense of usable net floor area?
I don't think they're necessarily connected. I think if you talk about the ICON project, I think the environment in terms of the market was very tricky at the time, and the location in terms of it wasn't the center of Luxembourg. So the client in that case was maybe appealing to a niche market, a very narrow market. And for those that know Luxembourg, there's a good stock of buildings. So I think they wanted something that would just kind of tip the balance in their favor. I don't think the client in that instance kind of came with the idea of purposely reducing the amount of net to gross, should we say, but I think they realized the benefit of creating a mix of spaces. And I think that's the difference at the moment. I think we certainly see it in our office, and personally, I enjoy having a variety of spaces within our buildings, because I think certainly through after the pandemic, I think the ability to and the need to experience different spaces to respond to your moods and to your needs, should we say, I think is really important. And I think that is really, for me, the kind of the shift. So one could say the net to gross is different, but ultimately there was still a significant amount of floor space to be used by the tenants, but it just happened to be not kind of the high end, or actually kind of the class A office space, because it was deemed to be a kind of secondary space. So the area is still there, it's just a different type of area. And I think that's really the shift that I think that we've seen, is the variety of spaces. It's not just kind of straightforward floor space, it's about creating that mix of spaces. I think it's a difference.
Can I add one thing, because I think it's important? I agree with that answer. I also think fundamentally what's missing from this conversation of cost benefit is the human benefit. It's ignored all the time. So I'll give you a couple examples. I was in a design charrette with architects at Harvard. We were talking about healthy materials, and somebody said, well, what's that going to cost me? And they said, well, that's a cost premium, I'm not going to do it. And I asked the architect, well, what's it going to cost in terms of the young women in particular at Harvard when we choose products with toxic forever chemicals in them that interfere with their hormone system and their reproductive success? So we have to include the health costs and health benefits in any economic decision. And when it comes down to office space, for example, the premium on higher ventilation rates, we did this math, and ultimately it's what led to higher ventilation rates at 270 Park. We've showed and modeled this out. Just on the cognitive function benefits, we see benefits in the order of $6,000 to $7,000 per person per year with better ventilation. Rolled up to a company, almost 10% gains to the bottom line simply from people who are not sick and performing better. So I think very often we think about the cost benefit when we think of buildings and design without including that human factor, and it's absolutely critical. That's part of it. It's ignored all the time.
Yeah, thank you, Darron, thank you, Joe. We are sitting down, yeah. Apparently we were standing in the middle, so we're getting instructions in there. What are you doing? Turn left, turn right. Right is there, left is there, whatever. Do you want to react as well, or we take the following question?
I think I fully agree with this idea that not every design space has to be a square meter that is exactly sellable in the same way. And actually the winter gardens are an outdoor space, they're not an indoor space. And I think that adds a quality to the building that is priceless, precisely. And it doesn't mean that the entire building will cost more. One thing is the cost of a building, another thing is the cost of a square meter that is sellable. So it really depends. It's project specific as well.
Thank you, Florencia. We have a second question.
Yes, I'm Mario Mitizo from VELUX Stiftung, and I have actually a question for Professor Allen. I was very much inspired by the whole process. It went from making actually indoor air actually a very big topic, now going to UN on the agenda. And I was thinking like, it would be amazing if we could do the same for daylight. And how would you go about see a window of opportunity for doing this? And because COVID-19 was definitely made a big breakthrough for indoor air quality, but for daylight, how would you do it?
It's a really good question. I think part of it is the events that VELUX is hosting, to be totally honest, is this connection between research and making sure it's driven into practitioners. I think that's really quite important. I also think if you see the success that we had with these air quality standards and getting into these places we never had access to, it's about the global community of researchers and also, again, these companies, because I think when you start forcing this issue and making it, connecting to these real world issues. So we used COVID as that catalyst to have these bigger conversations and introduce not just why it's important for pathogens, but why it's important for brain health. I think you can do the same for lighting, but ultimately it's about these kind of this connective tissue that doesn't always happen. But I think that's global scientific community. There's lots of global scientists in the room right now who kind of help that indoor air quality movement. I think you're doing the same with lighting.
My name is Anne Iversen. I come from a Danish association called Realdania. I think most of you will call it a foundation. But I have a question for you, Darron, first of all. You mentioned a few times that you went back to the buildings. I'm just curious to hear if that is something you do as a normal part of your practice and how you actually do that. And if you have a process or something for doing that.
Yes, we've started doing that more frequently. It's actually now part of the ROBA kind of work plan, so that's kind of part of the process. We're doing that more often. I think, first of all, it requires that relationship with the client to making sure that we can get access to the project. But certainly for Maggie's and for Sulis, that's been a kind of really important process for us to understand and support those that are using the building. And if I go back to some of the earlier projects, the academy projects, as a series of schools, it was a schools program, actually educating the teachers to use the building appropriately. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but we developed, we included natural ventilation was part of that design. But it had a kind of a lower level opening and a top level opening. But through the teachers not understanding the necessity to open both top and bottom window, they weren't getting the ventilation that we had developed to making sure that those classrooms were ventilated properly. So I think in that case, that was very important, that when we went back and did a post-occupant survey, we realized, even though we did a kind of soft landing and a guide how to use the building, just the simple necessity to open the top and bottom wasn't understood by the teachers. So that was a good example of how kind of going back and supporting the building users actually made sure that the building was used properly. So absolutely, we're encouraging that, and we have a team now that is kind of actively, should we say, pestering our clients or our kind of building users to try and get access to those buildings. Not only that we can help them use their buildings as was intended, but us to learn from that and to use that for our next projects and share to symposiums like we have today. So it's really important. It's not necessarily cost effective for us in terms of resource, but it's so valuable. And I think we are investing in that, and we certainly see the benefit of it. And educating our clients and the building users is something that is not that easy to do at the moment, but we're continuing to work on that. But we certainly see the benefits.
Indeed, as Joe has said, people need to comprehend the building. By the way, the quote was from Marcel. So it was Marcel.
Oh, sorry, Marcel.
Who said that. I had stolen from him many other things. Somebody else wants to react? We go to the following questions.
There is a mic already.
If you want to react,
Hello.
just
Hello.
tell me.
There we go. This is Lisa Heschong, and I have a question for Joe Allen. You said that you had tried for decades to get your findings about ventilation into the medical literature and were unsuccessful, and then all of a sudden it flipped and attention was given. So my question is, did you present the information differently, or do we require an epidemic that kills thousands of people in order to get the medical attention?
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, it's a really good comment. I don't think it required that. I think we've been trying, we had people in our field have had various levels of success, as you know, for over these years, but for some reason there was reluctance from the medical journals to accept this. A couple things got placed. But I think, I won't blame the medical community. I think maybe sometimes it's on us, right? We have to convey in different ways and to different groups this value proposition and base it on a strong evidence set from the scientific literature, similar for lighting. Like, how do you make that case to make it real for people? As you know, during the pandemic, it took us a full year during a pandemic with millions of people dying to get that through, which was kind of stunning. But I think, as we make progress, now that lesson will never be forgotten. There will never be a pandemic where buildings are not part of the front line of defense anymore. Never again will that happen. I guarantee it. People are now aware the building matters. So I think unfortunately it took a catalyzing event, but I also think that question too around how do you maybe position daylighting the same way, you've heard the term newsjacking, right? Like any chance you get, or I get anyway, I try to make every story about the building. A heat wave, that's a building thing. There are indoor heat waves. Air pollution, that's an indoor thing. Respiratory diseases, reproductive health, brain health, it's an indoor problem. I think we could do the same maybe for lighting and just force it into every conversation. Ultimately, let the building matters, whether it's lighting, acoustics, air quality, just driving home how much the building matters to our health, which has been ignored, as you know, for outside of the people who pay attention to this stuff.
Probably making the links, if I may, because indoor air quality and the strategies for indoor air quality may actually be very similar to the strategies that we use for bringing daylight in.
Before we go to the next, we have a question. I thought from the line. First one over here.
Yes, thank you very much. Russell Foster from the University of Oxford. Really, Darron, but the other speakers as well. Darron, if I understood you correctly, you're using materials that transmit UVB light. Did I pick that up?
Yeah, in the Maggie's project, we understood that they let the right UVB light come through, which are supporting the plant growth.
Yeah.
So typically in the laminated glass that we standardly specify for majority of our buildings, it has a PVB interlayer that doesn't allow that UV light through, which is then enhancing the light. So and it was painful to get that through the specification and really insist on that in the project in the icon. We don't have the ability to see if we didn't do it, what were the benefits?
That would be my point, because of course UVB is so important for vitamin D synthesis. And it goes on to the other points that if we're spending all this time inside, as we did with COVID, we were becoming vitamin D deprived. And I wondered if this was an issue in architecture to get people, to get enough UV light to encourage a vitamin D synthesis, which of course is not just bone health, but immune health and lots of other areas of health.
I think I don't have that kind of level of understanding to kind of comment on the kind of detail, but I'd certainly know from the research and reliant on the consultants that was an important aspect to making sure that the specification of that layer was right.
For the plants, but not necessarily the humans. Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Do we have questions from the online audience?
Okay. We have Dr. Peter Defoe that is asking, where can we find the quantitative evidence of the health benefit of daylight within a dwelling? And in the highly unlikely event that this does exist, what is the minimum illuminance required and over what period?
Sounds like an exam question. Oh my God.
It's a tough question, yes.
I'm not sure. Yeah, another one. Who wants to react? Florencia, maybe? Tell me the exact illuminance.
The exact illuminance, we have norms and standards that actually say that. We were discussing yesterday about it. 300 lux is normally the amount of lux that you need to see and to work, for work spaces. Then 50 lux is normally the amount to just walk by. 100 is considered an amount to its useful daylight illuminance. I think that about how to bring daylight to a project, it's the task of the architect. I think that we have a very difficult task at the moment because the buildings are being regulated by engineers and by just minimum heat loss and by a very simple calculation about reducing energy use regarding heat loss, and all the other parameters are being left behind. And it's actually what we are all trying to do, and I think that something that is common in the three speakers, to bring something else that is not just that energy, but actually all the problems of the buildings today and everything that we are missing comes from that very simple calculation. So I think that the debate is precisely for that. It's to just open to be more precise about things, but today norms are catching up, and it's great. Today we can find in European norms quite a lot about it, or probably ASHRAE as well.
Yeah, I think it's also about compromising between different priorities. I don't know if also you want to react to that in terms of the different needs of buildings and people, and how actually to choose the strategies that can actually meet all of the different and dynamic requirements.
Well, I address that and the comment. I think it's a telling question because I actually think the evidence base is really deep for all of the benefits of daylight on health. But maybe it ties into a couple of the comments we've heard. I think it's incumbent on all of us, the people who study this, or practitioners, to synthesize that in different ways. Maybe the message is clearly not getting through. It exists in silos. Maybe some of it's buried in scientific literature, sometimes in a report. But that's a hint that why is this not advancing like maybe the indoor air quality did? Yeah, maybe it's not just the pandemic, but maybe the messaging and the gathering of this evidence and delivery in many different mechanisms and forums is still clearly needed, because I think the evidence base, there are experts in the room who focus on this and the benefits, health benefits of lighting will know this, but that there's decades of research on this. So I think maybe we all need to take that into consideration and do a good job of continue to communicate those benefits.
There's plenty of hands that are just rising right now. Thank you.
Is it on? Yeah.
Yep.
So Joachim here. So just as a comment to that, recently I did see that they published what's called the Ladenburg Statement, which actually is a consensus statement by maybe a lot of other sort of researchers also within this room on lighting and lighting effects. So it's just been published, so that would be a good place to go. And as far as I know, those sort of conclusions and stuff has also been put forward to the WHO now. So that's at least an interesting sort of step towards putting lighting into consideration. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Helena Bilov-Hiba. I work at a smaller architecture company in Sweden, and I was wanting to ask you a question. With your very fine reputation and prestigious company behind you, do you think it's easier to motivate such a nice big atrium space, or how did you go about selling it to the client? Because I think when I see out our projects, it's so much that the client wants these square meters, and our atriums are always way too small and don't provide daylight enough. Did you support it by argumentation, simple sketches, or did you start with more advanced daylighting studies? That's my question, really.
I think the reputation does help. I think obviously our portfolio of projects and expertise and experience certainly helps convince the clients that they have confidence in our ability. But I think it's a mixture of everything that you described: sketches, visualizations, the VR models, all those kind of wealth of materials that we love using to convince a client. I think allows them to to move forward and take that risk in some respects, be brave about what they needed to achieve. And I think, again, maybe because the market, I keep using the market as an excuse, but it's not. It's kind of a kind of design generator. We had to work harder at the design. We could have done a very simple atrium and left it and moved on. But you know, in terms of the amount of design effort and commitment and emotion that went through that, it wasn't easy. And I think one could say the benefit of a larger office, we have the expertise that we could pull in, you know, literally within seconds to a conversation. And I think all those kind of things add to those benefits. And the client then, because of that, has the confidence you know, one could say takes that little bit of a risk to move forward with a larger atrium, and you know, fortunately, it was very successful. But we're very confident and very passionate about what we do, and that's, in some respects, it's the personal commitment. I think the connection with the client also helps.
Thank you. There's online.
Yes. I have somebody asking, what would be your key advice for building investors? That's a difficult question. I'm choosing just difficult questions.
I can go.
You go first. Yeah,
I work with a lot of building investors, and I think the key advice is this. If you're not investing in healthy buildings, you will be sitting on a stranded asset. It's that simple. Yeah. You're going to invest $1 million, $50 million, $100 million, $500 million in a building, and you're not going to incorporate all of this latest science on daylighting, air quality, acoustics, healthier materials. Well, then you're now competing against somebody else who will, by great architects and designers, and you will have a stranded asset. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a term that we're starting to use a lot more in the office, the stranded assets, and part of this post-occupancy analysis and research is in informing that and making sure that the designs that we are developing don't become a stranded asset. And I think convincing the client to allow that adaptability of a project is not easy. But as you know, the difference between a developer and an investor, I think that's the difference. You know, developers more often than not just flip the project, and it's the investor that, you know, that remains with the project. So I think somehow we need to get past those developers to inform the investors. I think the stranded asset is a fantastic response. I think, you know, making sure that we don't have stranded assets is the key.
Yeah, I think it's also a matter of knowing our own limits as architects, saying up to here I can concede, up to here I don't, because I think that this is what makes the quality of a building, and it's actually also about our own limits, not just convincing the others.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I think that concludes.
I have one more.
Yeah, so I do see a couple of hands.
We can take one.
Yeah, we can take one. Okay.
And I'm going to say very quick, and then it's going to take 10 minutes. It's always like that. That's a very quick question, by the way. What are the main priorities?
Okay, sorry, I was sitting quietly listening. A great presentation, thank you. My name is Paweł Wargocki. I'm a professor at the Technical University of Denmark, DTU. Maybe I could first, I'm not on the panel, and I'm not the expert in daylight, so maybe answer the question that was posed on the online. I think daylight is important for our sleep, and sleep is important for our health. So I think that is the argument here, why we need to have a daylight in our buildings. And then the question maybe to the panelists is that I have been also struggling for years to put the message across that the importance of the conditions in buildings for human health. And fortunately, it is coming through. But still, I think that the main narration is decarbonization. So it's very difficult to speak with the people who are talking only about reducing carbon footprint and thinking about buildings to reduce the carbon footprint. So we started to work on the different ways of communicating health benefits by indicating that will also reduce the carbon footprint through the reduced health costs. So I would like to hear a panel comments about that approach.
Thank you, Paweł.
I think the embodied carbon is an important part of the project. I think again we've started to look at that in a little more detail. I think historically, sustainability was kind of focusing on the running costs of a project, but as we all know, the embodied carbon used to build a building and also the embodied carbon on the furniture and the things that go in the building are also kind of a key aspect. I think the Floyd project is a good example of how we're trying to really kind of optimize the amount of energy that is used in those light fixtures to create the kind of the right ambience, the right atmosphere, the right the feeling. I think responding to that circadian rhythm is really, really important, so that that we do enhance that, or as you say, kind of respond to that, and making sure that our sleep patterns and our well-being are really responded to that. So I think as always, it's a balance. I think it's trying to balance all these factors as we go along, and as architects, as designers and engineers and consultants and specialists, I think these kind of events are fantastic for us to kind of absorb and learn and take those informations away, and then feed it back into the industry and what we do.
Thank you.
I think that if I may add something, I think that it's very important to see that the carbon that we don't release is the one that we don't need to release. So it's not just about minimizing energy, it's about not needing energy. So it's about seeing parameters that are not energy related. When do we need to turn on the light when we don't have enough daylight? When do we need to use heating when the temperature is not enough? So one thing is not needing energy, and another thing is knowing how to lower our expectations, because energy efficiency has to do with reaching a certain target that is imposed by who and to do what. So it's about questioning our own expectations as occupants, our own expectations inside a building, and actually to learn how to use the elements to not need energy and to avoid the release of carbon.
I feel that this conversation could go on for a bit, but we have to be the bad guys, so the timekeepers, because we want you to have coffee and be energized for the next sessions. Let's thank again our 3 speakers and panelists.